A NATO airborne early warning aircraft flies slow, lazy patrols over the northern Polish border. Suddenly, at a distance of several hundred miles, it picks up the unmistakable radar return of a Russian fighter. The aircraft is closing fast at supersonic speeds, which puts it only minutes away from getting a good weapons lock on the big AWACS aircraft. The plane immediately banks and turns to put distance between itself and the Russian fighter. Simultaneously, an alert is issued to Poland's air defense network. A patrol of American F-15s have been in the air for 3 hours, flying a deterrent patrol, and are immediately vectored in. An alarm is sounded in the alert lounge of a Polish aircrew station on standby, and the two pilots rush to strap on their flight gear as the F-16s are prepped for flight. Since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Poland has kept aircrews on alert just in case of further Russian aggression. Meanwhile, the F-16's wing pylons are loaded with live air-to-air missiles. Within minutes, the pilots are climbing into their F-16s and screaming into the sky, ready to support their American allies. Thousands of feet in the sky and over 100 miles to the north, the big American F-15s are now picking up the unknown contact, presumed to be Russian, on their own radars. The F-15s are speeding toward the unknown contact, gaining airspeed so as to retain the advantage should this turn into a hostile encounter. The Russians have the distance advantage, with the R-77 Beyond Visual Range missile exceeding the range of the American AIM-120s by about 10 miles. However, the American fighters have better sensors, ensuring a higher probability of a kill, even if doing so requires putting themselves inside the kill envelope of the Russian fighter. There's a chance the Russian fighter is armed with R-37Ms with a range of over 300 kilometers. In that case, the F-15s will be well inside the Russian threat envelope in minutes, though the missiles are primarily meant to target less maneuverable aircraft such as the AWACS and tankers. The nimble F-15s would be a hard kill for the bulky R-37Ms. On the ground, the NATO AWACS plane sends targeting data to Patriot batteries stationed toward the north of Poland. While the Russian fighter is not yet within range of high-resolution targeting radar, the ability to link up with airborne assets makes Patriot air defense batteries deadly to interloping aircraft, even at long ranges. Soon, Poland's Aegis Ashore facility will be online and bring the same powerful tracking and targeting capabilities of the most advanced Aegis systems to ground-based air defenses. However, the facility is not yet complete after 4 years of construction delays. As a very likely target for Russian air or missile strikes, though, it is well protected by a ring of air defenses just in case the Russians seek to neutralize the multi-million-dollar facility before it's online and able to defend itself. The intercepting F-15s attempt radio contact with the Russian fighter, which is now identified as a Su-35, one of Russia's more capable fighters. The American Air Patrol warns the Su-35 that it's approaching Polish airspace and that it must turn back before crossing. The situation is tense, but not overly so. Russia is fond of pushing NATO's buttons by coming close to but not actually crossing into NATO airspace. In the Baltics, though, where NATO forces are weaker, Russian aircraft will occasionally and briefly cross into NATO airspace, only to shortly exit soon after. It's a common provocation that's picked up intensity over the last decades as relations between Russia and NATO have deteriorated. Using afterburners, the Polish F-16s are now in a position to support the American allies if necessary, though the plane seems to be taking no hostile actions. Its altitude and speed remain steady around 32,000 feet. If it was truly preparing to threaten the American F-15s, it would climb for altitude in order to give its missiles a height and speed advantage. Where the atmosphere is thinner, air-to-air missiles can travel faster for longer due to a lack of air resistance. Plus, once their fuel is spent, they can pounce on targets below, building additional speed from their downward trajectory. That's why in air-to-air engagements, modern missiles first perform steep upward climbs, gaining thousands of feet in altitude versus their targets before pouncing on them from above. The F-15s make it clear they mean business by climbing altitude, though the Russian plane remains on course. There's no response in their radio hails. Again, this is fairly routine. For now, the Russian Su-35 is in Belarusian airspace. After the war in Ukraine began, Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko has allowed Russia to base pretty much any forces it wanted inside the former Soviet Republic. This has dramatically increased the frequency of air encounters between NATO and Russian air forces near Poland's northeast border. Though rare, NATO has even shadowed Russian aircraft flying strike missions into northwest Ukraine from just across the border. As the distance to the Polish border shrinks, the F-15s change their course, turning their noses toward the Su-35. This lets the Russians know that the Americans are looking straight down the barrel at them in an optimal targeting angle for their electronically scanned array radars, which guide missiles to their target. While the F-15's radars can still guide missiles to target at a variety of angles, the head-on angle is optimal and lets the Russians know that the Americans aren't messing around. Any sign of hostility will be met with immediate and lethal force. Now with the airspeed and height advantage, and well within the threat envelope of the Eagle's AIM-120's AMRAAMs, the Russian Su-35 is in dire straits if it decides it wants to pick a fight. To make matters worse, ground-based air defenses are now in the game. Patriot air defense batteries use their powerful AN/MPQ-65 radars to track and target the Russian fighter. The big phased array radar provides the Patriot system with classified range, believed to be in excess of 100 kilometers. It's a formidable air defense radar that uses a second traveling wave tube to boost the strength of the signal. This makes the AN/MPQ-65 difficult to jam or spoof, even at a long range. The attack network to the U.S. military's Link 16 command and control network allows the Patriot battery to share information with a vast array of U.S. assets. Software upgrades throughout the 2000s and 2010s give the Patriot a greater capability to conduct TBM, or theater ballistic missile searches, a necessity spurred on by the growing danger from long-range ballistic missiles fielded by both Russia and China. The system can also engage targets at predetermined altitudes so as to neutralize the effects of chemical weapons or early-release submunitions, which would otherwise be released across a wide area. The combination of software and radar is even able to tell if a contact is manned or unmanned, and if incoming ballistic objects re-entering the atmosphere are carrying ordnance or not. This makes the Patriot capable of resisting at least some of the most common countermeasures employed by ballistic missiles, such as releasing dummy warheads to lure in intercepting missiles. What makes the Patriot system work, however, is the PAC-2 and PAC-3 missiles. The PAC-3 missiles are the newest iteration of Patriot air defense missiles, but designed almost solely for the interception of ballistic missiles. The PAC-3 missile is slower and has a smaller range than the PAC-2, as it's intended to destroy ballistic missiles in their terminal phase. They also employ a hit-to-kill kinetic warhead armed with active radar that can be disconnected from ground stations and guide itself to a target, being smart enough to target the warhead portion of the missile. The kinetic kill warhead does employ a small explosive charge called a lethality enhancer, which launches 24 tungsten fragments in a radial direction to enhance kill probability. This makes the PAC-3 a much more sophisticated missile than the PAC-2, but also gives it extremely poor capabilities against a fast-flying and agile enemy fighter like the incoming Su-35. That's why Patriot batteries carry a mix of missiles, and it's the PAC-2's job to destroy incoming aircraft, which might threaten the Patriot battery itself. To do this, the PAC-2 employs a large fragmentation warhead, which is designed to shred enemy aircraft. A direct hit is not required to neutralize a fighter jet or a bomber, as these delicate machines require thousands of precisely engineered parts, all working perfectly to stay in the air. Damage to even some of these systems can be lethal to the aircraft, and the PAC-2 creates a vast cloud of high-speed shrapnel that shreds even the most armored enemy plane. In a wartime situation, a firing solution would have already been achieved, and the incoming Russian Su-35 would be facing threats from both airborne and ground-based missiles. But NATO and Russia are not at war yet. Thus, the F-15 pilots are told not to engage unless they themselves are engaged, and instead are directed to intercept the Russian plane within visual range. It's a show of force with the F-15s placing themselves between the Su-35 and any further penetration into Polish territory. As expected, the Su-35 briefly crosses into Polish airspace, is met by the American F-15s, but doesn't push its luck and quickly turns its nose parallel to the F-15s. After a few minutes, the Russian fighter once more turns back for safe airspace, leaving the F-15s to loiter near the border and watch from a distance. It's yet another microaggression by Russia meant to simply show NATO that it's not afraid of it, though it very much should be. Russia's aging air fleet puts it in serious doubt that it could actually threaten NATO airspace in any significant manner, and the current sanctions against Russia has left it unable to procure the more sophisticated electronic components it relied on for producing its air-to-air and air-to-ground missiles. This means that as the war in Ukraine rages on, Russian stockpiles of weapons diminish daily, and it couldn't possibly hope to compete against the vast quantities of missiles NATO still holds in reserve. Now go watch What's Wrong with Russia's Military, or click this other video instead.